Baroness Verma actually was one of the people that led energy and environment as as representative in the House of Lords, and Jim Keyes was CEO of Sun 11 and was one of my father's mentees. Both of these individuals are people whose ethics really set the standard, and they don't necessarily lose money by making social responsible investing. In fact, they've actually made money by doing the right thing and taking personal responsibility. So I look forward to getting to learn more about them. Can you hear? Can you all hear me? Okay. All right. Well, out of respect to everybody here, I don't want to take too much time, but would you guys each take a moment to introduce why you felt passionate about trying to make an impact with the influence that you had?
So thank you very much, first of all, Marianne, for inviting me here today. I do the work I do in the aim of public service. I've been a politician a very, very long time, but I use my platform to try and help actually bring up the issues that we need to be talking about, because an unequal world is always going to be a very unsafe world. So I try to use the tools I have. I am a business person from background, my first business at the age of 19, but I also recognize there are so many divisions in society, whether it's in this country or in others, that we have to work very, very hard to try and mend a lot of broken areas, but also elevate some of those real great people who will never get a platform otherwise.
Well, and I too have a unique opportunity, having had the privilege of leading both 7-Eleven and a company that is near and dear to many people's hearts, Blockbuster. I have a unique voice out there in the market, and I've had some unique experiences. What I saw leading to very large global companies is a tremendous opportunity to help make the world a better place. You have a very, very sizable microphone as the CEO of a global company, and what I found is that there is so much opportunity out there for people to use learning, to use education as a platform from which to grow. It could be someone growing up in a small town in Africa, village in Africa, that doesn't see the opportunity but uses education to change their life, their community's life, and ultimately have an impact on the world. Or it could be someone in a family office or a corporation that realizes their degree is just a license to learn, and then they keep learning and they use knowledge and education to overcome fear and obstacles, and they help, again, their family, their community, and ultimately make an impact on the world. So I've captured this in a book I've recently released called Education is Freedom, about the power that each of us has within our hands to use knowledge to advance our personal destiny and also to help society.
Thank you. One of the keys that I've noticed among people who are passionate about social responsible investing, and that's the people, planet, profit model, in which you don't just focus on making a profit, but you're wondering about what is the impact, and you're taking personal responsibility for what you have as an influencer in this world. Many people here, and I'm just going to be very blunt, when you're making decisions that come across your desk, you're not just making decisions about a bottom line, you're making decisions about whether whole communities will get to put food on their table. How much food can they put on their table? How many people can pursue an education? Will it only be one person out of a family of 3, or will it be all the children? When we make these decisions, it's very easy to forget, and many people have been philanthropists, and they take their hat off there, and then they sit back and they think, oh, now I'm just a business person. So I'll just share this quick story with you. A number of years ago when I was a little kid, my father brought home what I called his homework, and he had stacks of papers, and they ranged, and there's a diagram in there, and it went from 15 cents all the way up to $25. And I asked my father, what are you trying to do here? And he said the shareholders voted that they want to spend $7.50 to manufacture something. Don't ask me, I don't remember what it was. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm looking to see who's asking for that. And I said, as only a kid would see it, why don't you go to the people asking for 15 cents or $1, give them the pre-approved $7.50 and make everybody happy? And I just skipped away. And I'll never forget, my father got on his knees and looked me in the eyes and said, "Thank you for reminding me what my real job in this world is." Years later, around 1996, my father walked into the room and he tossed Thomas Friedman's book, The Lexus and the Olive Tree, on my bed. And he said, "Everyone your age and younger should read this because this is the world you're going to inherit." And then he told me, "Remember that thing you told me to do? I did do it. Don't ask me where, maybe Jim knows, I don't know where, but it was somewhere in South America." And he said they built hospitals, they built schools, they built roads, and not a dime was charity. And here's my father who had worked with the muscular dystrophy in telethons, he donated land to the American Bald Eagle, he made a difference every way he could. But he had forgotten briefly that when he sat behind the desk of CEO, he was making an impact on society. And that is why I wanted to highlight what these two exceptional people are doing. Because one of the things that both of you share in common is that you built yourself up. And I think that having the experience of that really helps bring back empathy. And I would love, Sandy, for you to tell people about what you are doing with the wells in India and refrigerated capacity for food, because that's a wonderful example of transforming lives.
Thanks, Marianne. And it has to be passion. If it's not passion driven, you do it with not knowing why you're doing it. And so we do a lot of work with the tribals in India, but we also do a lot of work with renewable energy in Africa. And in both cases, what we're doing is, in India through education and skills development for women, for children from the tribal belts, and in Africa for the farmers, and predominantly trying to make Africa come into the net zero targets without the punishment of not being able to economically grow. Because, you know, we can't expect countries to grow without the infrastructures. So we need to ensure that we assist them in building up what is God gifted to them. And in both cases, God has gifted a lot of sunlight, a lot of land, a lot of agriculture. And now we need to provide the skills and the storage. So for food in Africa, 60% goes to waste. So it's got grown and then it falls and it's waste. I think it's criminal when there is so much poverty in the world that we would enable that to happen. And I get angry with people who do aid and constantly do aid in the same model that they've been doing for decades. If it had worked, why are we still doing the same thing now? Why isn't it that we of us who actually should think much more better about spending other people's money because people give it in good faith? Why aren't we looking at it being a long-term, sustainable development? Whether it's through the goals. I'm not a fan of people saying, well, I don't want to give money unless you give money and make it into a commercial venture so that people who are recipients can also make it a commercial venture for themselves. And I loved the previous speaker when he said about family. You know, and the one thing that the previous speaker and I share is the name. So I think there's something in the name Sandip. Because to be quite frank, if you think about your own family and then think of the world as your family, you would treat it much, much better. I have 2 children, phenomenal children, and both of them had been, I gave my inheritance to them as they were growing up, simply because there's no point in me giving it when I'm dead, because I won't know what they're going to do with it. So I'd like to see what's happening with the hard work I've put in and how it's going to evolve. So we are doing a lot, Marianne, but we do it because we want to, not because we have to. But I think the point has now come in the world where we all need to have to do the thing. And we need to have an honest discussion with ourselves. Our governments need to have an honest discussion. And those that run rather large NGOs need to also have an honest discussion about why we still are having the poorest of the poor still stay poor, and those that are rich benefit from the poorest of the poor.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, I have a bit of an advantage because, as Marianne described her dad, John C. Thompson, I was a young employee of 7-Eleven and had him as a mentor, and I was able to see what his character was. In the book, I talk a lot about basically the hierarchy of success, and it starts with a platform, a foundation, I say, of character. Things like integrity, humility, gratitude. I saw that in Marianne's dad because running a major global company, he also had a philanthropic side, not just because he was a good guy, but he also saw the benefit and that shareholder value and social good are not mutually exclusive. You can actually do really good things for society and make money for your shareholders at the same time. We converted that when I had the privilege eventually of leading the company. We were getting a lot of pressure from our board to cut our philanthropic budget. And I said, well, it's hard to do. I know it's hard to justify sometimes when you're in difficult financial times giving money away, but isn't there a way I could demonstrate a return on investment? I have to justify every investment I make, whether it's advertising or building a new store. Maybe I could find something. And what we found for 7-Eleven was that education was one of those opportunities. We had, at the time, 40,000 stores worldwide, and we needed employees. We needed educated store managers. Well, why not go into local communities and help those young people see the opportunity to turn their education into a career? And so we built a foundation to accomplish just that. As a result, we increased the philanthropic budget because we were able to reduce recruiting costs, training costs, hiring costs by building a pipeline of future employees through education. But your dad was literally the model for me in creating that kind of opportunity.
Thank you. I really like that you highlighted, both of you did, because a lot of times when I talk to people from the offices or people that lead international corporations, they understandably are dealing with a bottom line. And the question is, how does this make financial sense? That's not an evil question to ask, that's a practical question to ask. But when you start looking at your philanthropy and your humanitarianism as a way to invest in your own company, how does it make sense for your structure? It can make a lot of sense. What my father did in South America, saved the company money and made an impact. What Jim described, it began as philanthropy, but it actually ended up being investment into the company. What Baroness Sandip Verma described, it begins as something that's a bit of an outreach and humanitarian effort, but eventually you almost are creating humanitarians in those individual communities. And I think that is also where we have to change the language of humanitarianism today. For me, absolute success is when you see yourself creating leaders and people that become the humanitarians in their own communities. And I've been able to see that happen, and I know you all have as well. Some of the things, when we talk about conscious capitalism, this lingo didn't used to be around when people talked about profit sharing. Believe it or not, my grandfather and my father, they were called socialists and communists for suggesting that employees should share profits. So sometimes when you come up with these ideas, they seem crazy and insane, and then eventually they become embraced as the best way to do business. I would love for you to share with everybody, Sandy, how you are linking a concern about the environment and your concern about women, and how you're bringing that into a financial discussion.
So thank you, and it's critical to have the debate on gender in it, because you will find that any disaster will always impact predominantly more on women and girls. When we face famines, it's always the same. And so it's really important that we have a lens on that throughout our discussions. So the work we're doing, so if I can just go on to the work we're trying to do with the transition in Africa, it is basically trying to bring in women into the formal workplace sector. So you give them the skills so that they actually have something that they can feel proud of, go back to their families, and also demonstrate that they are part of the breadwinning cycle. And I think that the work we're doing, particularly with farmers in Africa, is putting agronomists in to help support the way they farm. So instead of one yield, they're getting 3 yields a year. Instead of maybe just growing a basic crop, that they're able to grow some premium crops, then helping them get access to markets. There's no point in having all the crops if you haven't got access to markets. There's no point if you haven't got the storage facility or the logistics to travel. So So it's about the 360 view of what you're trying to deliver. It makes absolute business sense. For us, we are a business. We do the work. The work gives us a great return, but we also see a great return in the people. Therefore, in years to come, they will generationally also be commercially able to give opportunities to other people. I love what you say about we should be developing leaders from where we operate. And I just think that we have been so preoccupied about telling people what they should do, how to do it, and forgetting that maybe they know things better because they know their environment better. They know how to. I was with an event last night where we were talking about earthen pots. And do you know, earthen pots, if you see the amount of work that goes into it and what is paid for them is ridiculous. But you know, they are better at refrigeration than fridges. It's better to keep water cooler and clearer and cleaner in an earthen pot than it is in a refrigeration system where you are polluting the atmosphere, God knows how much.
Thank you. And one of the things we're talking about was in creating leaders, but what is it that you should be looking for in a potential leader? And I think, Jim, your story is so unique, and your attitude that allowed you to become and rise to where you are is really exemplifies the traits that those of us who are looking for leaders should be looking for. So please share that story.
Well, thank you. Actually, you just triggered an interesting story that I think I will share. Leadership comes down to change and adapting to change. And adapting to change requires us to have a fundamental understanding of people, each other. And I'll tell you where mine came from. I did not grow up in a family office environment. I grew up in a house with no running water. And literally no one in my family had gone to school. I wasn't as poor as some of the kids in Africa we're talking about, but even in central Massachusetts, if you get 40 miles west of Boston, it can get very rural very quickly. And my environment, in terms of people, we had two racial groups, Italian or Irish. The Irish hated the Italians hated the Irish, and that was about it. And then all of a sudden I through education, had the opportunity to come here. And I learned what I have now defined. I have a whole chapter in my book on something called cultural literacy, which I think is fundamental to developing leaders. Because what I learned when I came here as an American, I thought, oh, these guys kind of love me. They hated me. My British friends hated me. I was a Yank. I was obnoxious. I was loud. I couldn't go to a pub and have a conversation. I had to be playing darts or doing something. I was just different. And you know what happened to me? I was taken under the wing of my minority friends at the time, my Indian and Pakistani friends, who I was going to school with over in Lewisham, a place called Goldsmiths College, who taught me that I wasn't in America anymore. I was in Britain, and I needed to adapt. And they taught me to properly converse in a pub instead of just sitting there without knowing what to do. They taught me to adapt to the culture that I was in. And little did I know that by the second semester, I was very popular. I was playing cricket. I had a modern style. I ended up being leadoff batsman in the cricket team because I was a free swinger, and everybody was embarrassed by my style. Today it's very popular. So I thought, what a great game! I can hit a foul ball and I get 6 runs. This is great. But they taught me that assimilation, and little did I know, dial forward 20 years, I'd be leading a company called 7-Eleven, where my largest franchisee group was Indian and Pakistani, and understanding their culture gave me a huge advantage as the leader of 7-Eleven, because I had gained that cultural literacy. So my message there is that, especially for young students or entrepreneurs, is that our strength is in our differences, and if we can learn cultural literacy, just as we learn, any other subject, and learn the power of understanding and working together, then the richness of that experience will make us better and stronger. And it's worked in my career, and I'm now trying to help others understand that opportunity. And I'm grateful, by the way, to to my friends in the UK for helping me with that very important learning at an early stage in my life.
Wonderful. Well, as we start wrapping up, I just wanted to give each of you all a chance to highlight something that you're really passionate about right now. And I'll highlight one of the things that I'm working on. Within the Memnosyne Institute, our focus is on helping people deal with the challenges of globalization in the world, and that has helped us basically negotiate the first treaty in 300 years between Hopi and Navajo nations. That's helped us to save $55 million worth of food being thrown away, and gotten it to food pantries and homeless shelters all throughout North America. And we're bringing that program over here to the UK, so please approach me if you're interested. The more nonprofits we know of, the more places we have to deliver the food to. So we definitely love to be connected. We helped get food over to the Ukraine last year. One of the other things that we did last year is we got 160 families out of the war zone in Sudan into the safety of South Sudan. But to emphasize what we've been talking about here, it's unrealistic to believe that philanthropy can help their grandchildren. It's going to take a for-profit investment to help people have a future life for themselves, and one that has dignity. And I think dignity can't be emphasized enough. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and I'm very, very blessed to have Baroness Sandip Verma be one of our advisors and board members for our chapter here in the UK. Thank you. And very, very blessed to have Jen be one of my advisors with UTF Holdings. So I would love for each of you to just share with them one of the things that you are most passionate about that you're doing right now.
So I think, look, you can be passionate about everything you do in life, because life would be really boring if you did things you didn't enjoy. But for me, the world is in a very chaotic place. It's dangerous. There are so many decisions being taken on behalf of all of us by a very small group of people. And I think we need to be able to raise our sort of discontent about that chaotic happening around the world. But it can't happen unless organizations, whether they're the corporate world, family offices who invest in business, actually have a reflection of what they are doing. Where are they investing? How are they investing? Who are they supporting? And how is that going to lead to a better outcome? And I think if we can have those honest debates, I think we'll have a much, much nicer world to leave as something for the next generation to inherit. We're just guardians at the moment, but we're guardians of a very difficult place. So my job is, and like you, I can be quite a brash, because if the message in politics isn't taken softly, then I'm afraid you have to raise the tempo, and that's what I do. I use my platform to raise the tempo, simply because if it's not going to be said on behalf of those who cannot say, it will not get done.
Well, I'd like to build on that thought, because the world is a very chaotic place. We just went through a really turbulent election in the United States, and it was we're a very divided population today, and on edge. And I strongly believe that the answer to all of this division, turmoil, chaos in the world, the lesson goes back to our ancient philosophers. I learned a lot in researching for my book. I learned a lot from the ancients. And one, Enid Rusht, was an Andalusian philosopher who talked about fear. Now, when I'm talking to kids, I put it in terms that are easier to understand. Yoda, also in Star Wars, quoted this Andalusian philosopher, and he said, when teaching Luke, he said, Luke, fear is the dark side. And we're in a cycle of fear throughout the world. And fear really is caused by ignorance. And that ignorance leads to anger, and anger leads to violence. And it's a cycle. And we're in it in so many places today. And he said, Luke, the answer is the light. And in his case, he used the force, called the force a metaphor for any religion or any form of faith. He said, you've got to have faith and you've got to have knowledge. And those two things will help you eliminate ignorance, replace ignorance with knowledge, and you replace fear with understanding. And then that cycle completely changes from to understanding, and then hope, and then peace. And what a far better cycle for us individually and collectively to have for the world. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish out there on a mission, to talk about the power of education, knowledge. Like when you're a kid and you're scared of the dark, you turn on the light, and that's what knowledge represents. And it's available to all of us more than ever before because of the power of technology. So if you can help me spread that word, I'd be grateful for it. I think we all individually and collectively need a little peace and love in our life. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.